Welcome to a brand new Amari Music Talk. I'm Richard Cole, the Amari in Amari Communications, and today I'm going to talk about the Red and Blue albums, the brand new expanded remixed versions of this classic compilation. Longtime listeners of Amari Music Talk, or even back in the Amari Purple Talk days, I reference the Beatles quite a bit on some episodes of those shows, and kind of really want to spend more time talking about them or devoting an actual episode. If you haven't had a chance to check out my review of the brand new single Now and Then, you can check that out if you like. I am going to talk about it more on this episode, but first I want to kind of give some background on my history with the Beatles. As a kid, we're talking like early 70s. For me, my world was Jackson 5, Earth, Wind and Fire, Stevie Wonder, Sly and the Family Stone, James Brown. But I would hear the Beatles on the radio. Of course, probably by this time they had been apart for like maybe 2 or 3 years at this point, so I didn't hear a lot of their songs on the radio. Yellow Submarine would come on like every year on network television, so I did see that, so I kind of had an idea of who they were, but not as in depth, not until around the age of 10. So we're talking 1976, and this compilation was my gateway. The commercial advertising this, I don't know what it was about it, but it drew me in. It was like, okay, yeah, I liked what I was hearing. I think you can find that commercial on YouTube somewhere. But I remember like it played snippets of the songs that are on this, and I don't know, it was just something about it. I was hooked, and eventually got it. And I don't know, we'll talk about this another day. But yeah, not the greatest cover in the world, but I love the songs. The energy coming from those tracks was amazing. And I wanted to take a deeper dive. So I would say, as far as my first real Beatles acquisition, so we fast forward to age 11, talking about 1977, and then this was the one that really kind of informed me what, like, oh, this band is no joke. Lennon and McCartney, that's classic songwriting duo. On this compilation, every song was written by them. And like I said, it kind of showed off more of I guess, the creative side of the Beatles, where rock and roll, it's in the title. It's them just rocking out from the beginning of their career to the end of it, and it's just total straight rock. This kind of filled in the blanks and really hooked me in. So by the following year, I started studying up on them, and Revolver. Actually, I got lucky that year and got a UK pressing of Revolver, and it was on from there. So every year since then, and would get into Paul McCartney and Wings, and got it into John Lennon a little bit later. But yeah, they're a very enjoyable group for me. I enjoy that group. They're one of my favorite groups. Like I said, it's up there with Sly and the Family Stones, up there with The Time. So like I said, got all the albums, got books about them. So when it was time to, I guess I should talk about the Blue album. I didn't really get the Blue album until much later. Um, no apparent reason. I think mostly because, really, like I said, when I got Revolver, then the year after that I got Sergeant Pepper, Magical Mystery Tour. What did I get? Abbey. Let's see. Yeah, actually Abbey Road, and then I got Let It Be. So I probably really didn't have the need to get the Blue album for a long time, but eventually I just kind of wanted to complete that set. And it isn't, both are very nice compilation. All right, so with that out of the way, um, like I said, I have the box sets, that have been released over the last few years. Sergeant Pepper, Revolver, the White Album. So the next logical release for this year, all Beatles fans were anticipating a box set of Rubber Soul. But the Beatles flipped it, and said, hey, we're going to come out with this new track now and then, and we're going to include that on a brand new remix compilation. So by now, you've probably heard every YouTuber and blogger and Beatles fan, talk about the single, talk about the compilation. So if you want to check those out as well. But these are going to be my initial thoughts on the Red and the Blue. Yeah, was a little disappointed that we didn't get Rubber Soul. I was excited for the Beatles track. I know at first a lot of diehard, whether they're first generation fans or like myself, second generation fans, were a little nervous about the whole AI aspect. Actually, I wasn't. I was intrigued from the very start. I mean, I got what the concerns were about, like, oh, they're just gonna recreate John's voice, or they're gonna de-age Paul, and I get that. But I was still intrigued. I kind of like, I think they're a bit more in tune to what's going on, and as far as exploring the new technology, it wasn't going to be like this cash grab or cheesy type of thing. But then including it with a brand new release, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, but I think these were designed more for future generations. What these albums did for me back when I was 11, I think, they're trying to capture that for this current generation and, the next couple of generations after that. And so originally I was going to just skip out on it, but having the inclusion of Now and Then on this one, it kind of raised the stakes. Hearing that the early material was getting kind of the remix treatment, the technology is there to do remixes for especially the really, really early stuff like Love Me Do, Twist and Shout, From Me to You. So that was an incentive for me to finally go ahead and pick them up. And I'm going to talk about just what I think about it. So I'm not going to go track for track. Like I said, there's a lot of different reviews, but I kind of wanted to just jump in and kind of give my opinions on them as well. But yeah, I mean, from the moment I started playing these, and I was totally blown away by it. It's, I had the feeling that as the release date was getting closer, that I just kind of had this feeling, because especially having heard Now and Then, and just how that has now altered me in a way that it's like, yeah, I've been listening to these songs for, 40 some odd years, almost 50 some odd years coming up, and it's like it's like a rediscovery. But like I said, we'll touch on that more in just a moment. But like I said, I'm not going to cover every single track. These are the highlights or the things that jumped out at me. My thoughts may change the more I listen to it. They may stay the same, down the road, months, years down the line. But these are the highlights for me. Starting with Love Me Do. So when I was listening to Now and Then, of course, Love Me Do was also another leaked track for this project, and hearing the remix on it. And I guess, if you're not that deep into the Beatles, the early stuff was a challenge. Of course, mono was the preferred choice of, mastering for the Beatles. They preferred mono. Stereo was kind of like an afterthought. But those very early records, Love Me Do, Please Please Me, the original master tapes to those no longer exist. They didn't keep stuff back then. They didn't start until, I think, kind of later into 1963 that they decided to keep different mixes or takes and things like that. So those things are easier to work with. But with something like Love Me Do, I think the only reference point they had was like an original vinyl single that they had to kind of go in, use Peter Jackson's MAL, recognition software to kind of create a brand new mix for that. The technology wasn't there up until recently. But what they've done with it, I really enjoy it. It's, again, I've heard Love Me Do since 1977, and it's not the greatest Beatles. I mean, it's their first record, so you got to give them a pass on that. It didn't do well on the charts. Over in Britain, America didn't even know who they were yet. But it's a pretty good start for a brand new band. But when I hear it, especially now that you can hear the bass, you can hear Ringo's drums. There's a separation on the acoustic guitars that it sounds fresh to me. Like I said, we've lived with this song for decades. We know how it goes. My ears are used to, first hearing it on this, eventually having the Please Please Me album, which that's a different version, I think, on the album than it is the single. But that's been in my ears. The 1987 CDs, and then later the 2009 remasters. So my ears have been conditioned to hear that song a certain way, and just kind of like, okay, it's Love Me Do, it's the first song, and then it's an enjoyable listen. But like I said, this new mix, this 2023 mix, gives it, like I said, it's a freshness, it's a brand new energy, and that's something I'm probably going to say through the duration of this episode, especially with the Red album material. Same thing with Please Please Me. A wider range in the mix. What I love is the separation of the background vocals. To me, hearing the 2023 remix, if you have something like the anthology, or if you go on YouTube and pull up like the video, maybe the video version of Please Please Me, but on the anthology, the video, there's a clip. I don't know what television show. I don't know if it's Ed Sullivan, or even if you have like the ones with the Ed Sullivan performances on it. There you can kind of hear the energy in that song, different from the record. To me, the 2023 remix gives me that feeling because it's like you can hear more of the drums. You hear what Paul's bass is doing. Again, there's that separation of guitars. So you really see, or not see, but you get to hear, the distinction between George's guitar and John's guitar in it. That the only way you could really experience that up until now was to watch them do that song live, like I said, whether it's at Sullivan or whatever British program where they were, playing it live and not lip syncing to it. So again, there's that energy that's there. Again, I think probably the one of the MVPs on this disc in terms of that energy. I saw her standing there, twist and shout. Those things I will be excited for when they, I don't know if they'll do a box set for it or if they just reissue the album with the 2023 or whatever remixes that they do. But hearing Twist and Shout, and especially I saw her standing there, I would love to hear a remixed Please Please Me album. Like I said, I don't know if they'll do a box set for that, but if they once they get around to doing that, yeah, just based off of hearing those tracks, I'm excited for it, definitely. In Twist and Shout, one of the standouts for me is, again, when you listen to or watch the anthology and, like I said, the different clips, whether, or again, go on YouTube and hearing them play it live. The bass, Paul's bass on Twist and Shout. It's a certain set of notes that you hear. It's kind of like boom, 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 boom. You hear that it stands out more. And like I said, when I watch the anthology or whatever live performance on YouTube, and you hear that more, it stands out more. I mean, wow, it's that's what I like. I mean, I like that energy to it, and it's different from the record. But now, like I said, that same experience that you hear when you hear them doing it live, you get that energy because that was live in the studio. That album was done like in less than 10 hours, I think. Or, yeah, no more than 12, but definitely like around the 10-hour range. And it was them just kind of performing it as they've been performing on stage, since they started, or since, they kind of honed their skills in Hamburg. And you feel that energy more. Like I said, you hear it on the original album anyway. But having these remixes, it's like, yeah, you're right there in the studio with them doing it. I know that sounds like a cliche. That's been like the cliche since CDs came about. That was the selling point. Like it puts you in the studio with them. But all cliches aside, yeah, I have that feeling even more with the 2023 remixes. Again, the vocals on this, they're separated. They stand out more. Some better than others, but again, it just kind of, when it has that kind of expanded range, and I think the way that things are mixed now, because you're dealing with Dolby Atmos or 5.1 surround, you're dealing with earbuds or beats, so you tend to hear things differently now. You tend to hear it differently. So I think things are being mixed better, for that. So now you hear that separation from the vocals. And again, like I said, we've lived with these songs for decades. But this adds a freshness to it. The quality matches the quality of other recordings from that period. And what I mean by that, if you listen to Miles Davis, or if you listen to Frank Sinatra, or you listen to, you know, whatever, you know, the technology in the States, because we've had 8-track, you know, pretty much I think roughly since 1957. And here you had the Beatles recording on 2-track up until about 1964, and then they went from 2 to 4 tracks, and they didn't even get into 8-track until, you know, what, Abbey Road, practically. So I think that was a weird thing for me as a kid, you know, because I would listen to the way Beatles records would sound, even though the songs are great, and I think that's a testament to how great songs are, is despite the fact that it was done on 2-track or 4-track, compared to what Motown records were sounding like, or Atlantic Records, or Stax Records, whatever Phil Spector was using in those days. You know, it was kind of like, yeah, there's kind of like that, a slightly inferior quality, but you gave it a pass because the songs were so great, and the energy and the chemistry of the band was so great that you kind of overlooked it a little bit. But now, you know, and I think starting with the 2009 remasters, that was the first step into bringing the quality of those songs to the level of the quality of whatever, whether it's Motown, Beach Boys, or, you know, Stax Records, Atlantic Records, Chess Records. You know, it was brought to the level of those as far as, you know, engineering wise, sound wise. It, you know, brings it to that quality. And now with the 2023 remixes, and I mean, even, you know, with the remixes of Sgt. Pepper, the White Album, Abbey Road, you know, now those songs can now sonically go toe to toe. You know, even though there was a lot of innovation, like I said, it's one thing with 2 to 4-track versus when everyone else was using 8-track as well. You know, but now these songs have a chance to stand, you know, standing toe to toe with the quality of those recordings. Another standout for me is, of course, Ringo's drums. Especially, I think something like Roll Over Beethoven, which it was a song that I liked. I think at the time I heard it when, you know, 10, 11, right around that time, I liked it okay, maybe not as much as some of the other tracks that I was hearing at that point. But here, what I enjoy about listening to that song with the 2023 remix is the heartbeat of Ringo's bass. It's like there's a dimension there that I didn't hear in previous, you know, recordings, whether it was the 2009 remaster or some of the original original pressings of the albums. Probably my absolute favorite, or one of my absolute favorites, is You Can't Do That. I love the cowbell that's on it. I can't remember if that was the one where John said he was kind of going for that kind of Wilson Pickett sound, you know, that kind of Atlantic Records sound with that. But I love how they've mixed the cowbell on this particular mix, because it lets Ringo's drums drive the song more, and that's just for my ears. You know, your ears may hear it differently, or like I said, if you watch some of the other YouTubers talking about it, you know, they have their opinions on how it sounds to them. But for me, what I used to love about the original mixes of that song, you know, it's the guitars and it's the backing vocals, and of course it's the power of John's lead vocal as well. But with this 2023 remix, then it's, you know, it's Ringo's drums that's driving it. You can feel it drive the song quite a bit. Another favorite is A Hard Day's Night. I know there's, or at least one show that I watched that said that they weren't too keen on the mix of "And I Love Her," but I don't know. It still sounds timeless to me. Maybe even more so, but maybe I'll give it another listen, and like I said, maybe it'll change my perspective on it. But I didn't mind it as much. I Feel Fine, again, Ringo is the MVP. I think the 2009 remasters, for me, I got to really key in on Ringo's drums on that track because of that remaster. But here, like I said, it's really brought out to the front more. And again, that places it, there's no real ranking, but I would say You Can't Do That, Hard Day's Night, I Feel Fine, those are like the favorites for me. Same thing with Ticket to Ride. The mix, to me, it sounds heavier. It elevates the track. Help. I don't know. I didn't really hear a major difference the times that I've listened to it. Like I said, maybe my ears will change, down the road. Listen to it for a few more weeks, few more months, and maybe something will jump out that I didn't notice before. But the only thing about that is I missed the James Bond kind of style intro. That which you watch the movie Help, that's in there. I didn't know that it was not part of the song, because over here in America, if you had an American pressing of this album, then when you play Help, it leads off with that sort of James Bond style. And I thought that was the coolest part of the song to me. So finding out that other pressings or the original album, I think by the time I got the original album, let's see, I think either cassette or CD, that wasn't on it. But if you buy the American version or the American pressing of Help, which is just the songs from the movie, and the other side is like the score from the film, then you hear that James Bond intro preceding Help on that. But yeah, like I said, there was no difference to me, but like I said, my taste will probably change. Moving on to Day Tripper, that's a favorite. I can say We Can Work It Out, the more that I listen to it, much improved. Like I said, had no problem with any of the original mixes or the 2009 remaster, but We Can Work It Out, the 2023 remix, is probably my absolute favorite. The Rubber Soul tracks, again, we were all hoping to get a Rubber Soul box set. Just hearing them, I think this is a great advertisement, depending on how you look at it, for when they eventually do come out with it. Norwegian Wood, Nowhere Man, Michelle. If I Needed Someone is definitely a standout with the new mix. Girl, that's one I have to listen to a few more times. It's one of my favorite Lennon penned tracks. But yeah, I don't know. I have to listen to see if I enjoy the new mix more or previous, whether it's original or 2009 remaster on it. But I've enjoyed listening to Michelle, In My Life, If I've Needed Someone. I would think out of the Rubber Soul era stuff, those three, and then We Can Work It Out, are my favorites on this particular compilation. And the rest are from Revolver, which we got that box set last year. So I would say really, just my thoughts that these are, like I said, great selling points for newbies, regardless of what age, but particularly younger generations. This is a good jumping on point. Um, but like I said, I'll discuss more of that later. Some quick thoughts on the Blue album. Like I said, I wasn't going to get these at first, but knowing that Now and Then was part of this set, and because of the new mixes for the Red, um, that was my selling point for finally getting these. Like I said, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them because basically the mixes for those are the previous remixes from the respective box sets. So the Sgt. Pepper material, which was 2017, White Album 2018, Abbey Road 2019, and then later with Let It Be remixes. As a Beatles fan, since I already have those, there's no real difference, but there are songs here that are not part of those albums that did get a remix treatment. Um, Probably the two for me. Let's see. Well, no, let me start. Actually, let me start with one of the Sgt. Pepper tracks, which is A Day in the Life. Um, with that, if you have the Sgt. Pepper album, you have where you have the Sgt. Pepper's reprise that's on it. And when that fades out, you got the audience cheering and everything. And then that crossfade, it crossfades into A Day in the Life, where on the original 1967 to 1970 Blue Album vinyl, it's just the song. It just starts off, the crowd noise isn't there, it's the actual original mix of the song. And luckily they put that there as well. So it's nice to hear A Day in Life without that, because if you hear it out of context, like when you play the original album and that crossfade, it works, you know. But if you're listening on streaming, then there's that sort of cut, or if you burn CDs and if you don't set the settings to have it crossfade like the original album, then it's that interruption of silence, and it kind of ruins the listening experience. So it's nice to have just the standalone track available for that. But the controversial track is I Am the Walrus. The way that it is mixed, I'm on the fence with it. If you've heard it, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Do you like this new mix? Do you not like it? It's not that I don't like it. I know there's certain mixing choices that's on it that does take me out of the original experience of that song, because it is one of my favorites. And I don't know, probably the best, if there is a remix that's better, I really love the version that's on the Beatles Love. That, the drums are heavier, and it does, because I think what it is, it's being mixed, because like I said, you got this younger crowd, and it's, in a way, it's almost early hip hop almost, where you had James Brown, that was sort of the original DNA for all things hip hop. But I Am the Walrus is a close is a close contender for that. And the way that it's mixed on Love, you can almost hear like the Beastie Boys doing something like that. And like I said, the way the drums pop, the way Giles Martin popped the drums on that particular mix, I like that. It works better with that. This one, the drums to me are a little bit more subdued. Um, the horns and the strings a little bit more subdued, so you don't get the power of that, like you do with the original mixes of that, or even the 2009 remaster of that. But I don't know. I have to listen to it a few more times. Like I said, I don't hate the song now, or I mean, I don't hate the mix. But I'm not too excited about the mix. Like I said, there's certain elements that I did enjoy, or I'm thinking like, well, okay, if they're remixing it, maybe this is what, I don't know, maybe this is the way John intended it to sound originally, or I don't know if they're trying to mix it for younger ears. Like, I don't know if younger generations want to hear strings, or they want to hear horns, or whatever it is. I don't know, but I have to listen to it a few more times, and but let me know what you think about it, though. But moving on from there, but my absolute favorite 2023 remix is "Hey Bulldog," and ever since I had the Yellow Submarine soundtrack, that has been like my favorite song on that, and probably actually one of my favorite Beatles songs, period. Um, I like the remix version that's on that Yellow Submarine song track. To me, it's a better mix than the 2009 remaster. The 2009 remaster, it did something weird with Paul's bass to where it sounds like he's playing a completely different song than what everybody else is playing on it, and it just felt like distracting, versus the original mix of it. But this, I think, is now my favorite mix of "Hey Bulldog," because it puts it back in place, but better. It gives me the feeling of the original, but better. Maybe at some point I'll do an A/B comparison between this mix and the Yellow Submarine song track mix. But up until this one, I would say that Yellow Submarine song track mix of "Hey Bulldog" I like better. But yeah, this 2023 remix is the best. So, that's it in a nutshell. What I think is that, again, this, for younger listeners, for the 21st century, for the youth of the 21st century, or any newbie, that has never really paid attention to the Beatles in their lifetime, and now it's, this is a good jumping on point for that. Like I said, I think this is the 21st century equivalent of what the original Red and Blue albums did for, say, my generation, coming up in the 70s and beyond. It's a good gateway. It's a better mix of songs because they've added more songs to it, and that's just the thing of over time. As their legend grew, as more generations discovered them, as the albums, as they're aging, and they're aging well. There are certain things that over time that have become favorites, that even though people were aware of it, or they knew it was great then because it was on certain albums, or with certain B-sides or certain singles, some of these things have taken on a different lease in life because of maybe what people were listening to with the 87 CD reissues, or the 2009 reissues, or the Beatles anthology, or certain songs included in commercials or movies now. This is a very good jumping on point for anybody that wants to get into the Beatles for the first time. Actually, I would recommend this set. And these will lead you to the albums. That's what it did for me. Like I said, I had this for a long time, and once I started reading more about the Beatles and learning about their albums and learning about the difference between the UK versions and the US versions, and it was like, okay, so the UK versions are the definitive original versions, and it was like, okay, well, I gotta have that. And like I said, luckily got Revolver, and that's what led me to their albums, and that's what led me to have them be one of my favorite bands. Um, oh, let me get back to, or let me start about, I'm losing my words now. Let me talk about Now and Then. Like I said, I did do a video for that with my initial thoughts. That was like fresh off of listening to it. But now that I've had some time to listen to it and watch the video, and watch the video quite a few times, like I said, this has changed the way I listen to this band now. It's weird because there's a finality that's there with that particular song. Um, I don't know, just because they're saying it's the last new Beatles song, it puts it drops the mic on it somehow. But it is emotional. I think sometimes the hype of it kind of put my expectations so high that I wasn't as emotional about it as I thought I should have been. But watching the video, it did kind of resonate a little bit. That there's so much history, there's so much closeness with that group. Um, you know, there's very little to where their impact hasn't had, some kind of influence in some way, shape, or form. So, it kind of resonated a little bit more, especially watching the video. To me, that opening shot where it's taken from a photo from John Lennon and Sean looking out over a sunset, and then you have the Beatles. It's from like one of their home movies. It was like from 1963, like from a home movie. They're kind of wearing these old school bathing suits from like the 20s. um, and it's weird, like they're standing next to each other. They're posing for the camera, but you have John looking like right. It's kind of the way he's looking. It's like he's looking at the future John Lennon, but it's that future John Lennon is looking back on the four Beatles, and it's just like that history, just that shot, just the composition of that shot is like, wow. You see that, you can just imagine what he's thinking. Just that, looking back over all that history, all that closeness, everything that they've been through as a group. That comes through. Even some of the comedic moments, I kind of thought, really, some of it, yeah, you can kind of say it's over the top. It's a bit too much, trying to be too funny. But I think the standouts for me, I think where it is John's humor that saves that. It balances out the corniness of it, where it's, you have the current Paul and Ringo singing the chorus, and then you've got, John, pointing and all this, and it's like, what, that's what he would do if they were recording that right here, right now. That's what would happen. The shots of the orchestra where he's directing it is the comedy. You could clearly see that be like an outtake if he was actually there conducting it. That would be an outtake of the making of that. You could see that actually happening. But I think the thing that resonated with me the most, besides the beginning opening shot, was the montage, them going back in time, sort of fade in, fade out of, they're going back and they're getting younger and younger and younger all the way to childhood. And then it fades to that shot from Hard Day's Night, the final scene of A Hard Day's Night, where they take the bow and then they fade out, and then the Beatles, in neon lights, that fades out. That was, that was pretty heavy. We've lost a lot of major, just over these last, John Lennon was like the earliest, but, here we are 30, 40 years later, and now we're at this thing where we've lost a lot of very powerful artists. And I think it's the weight of that, that adds to it. It's, we know it's John not here, we know it's George not here, but it makes you think about, like, a lot, whether it's David Bowie, whether it's Prince, or whether it's, like I said, there's so many artists that over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, have been kind of ducking out on us now. So when you hear something like a Now and Then, or you see that video, it does kind of bring that home. It's like you are nostalgic, you are grateful that you are still around, but sometimes we kind of like, God, we miss them having a new, regardless, whoever your favorite artist is that isn't here, that they're not here still making great music or good music, or, whether you going through a thing, you could always used to count on them to have that song that you need, and now you don't. You got to keep going back to the well of the classics or whatever. But like I said, it's it did resonate, and I do enjoy that song. I don't know if it's still the freshness of the newness of it, but compared to Free as a Bird and Real Love, both of those songs were good. I think I like Free as a Bird a little bit better than Real Love, but I think the 2015 remix of Real Love is better. But this one, I guess with the amount of time and thought that was put onto this track, it elevated, which was no different than what they've been doing the whole entire time, elevating the game. But, what do you think? Were you looking forward to it? Did your mind change once you found out that the Red and Blue were being remixed? And what do you think of the new mixes? What do you think of the additional songs on it? I know there's criticism with the vinyl, because what I love about the CDs is that they're in chronological order, where you don't get that. You get the original sequencing of the original Red and Blue album, but the third vinyl disc, kind of takes everything out of sequence because it's just the bonus tracks or whatever. But what do you think about it? Leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts. And if you like what you've heard today and you want to see more stuff coming down the line, hit like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you're on Patreon, become a Patreon supporter. There's early access and bonus and exclusive content not found anywhere else but on Patreon. So become a supporter and check that out. But until then, see you next time, and create your day, create your life. Peace.